Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly. Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast, your podcast to help you and your family cruise a little smarter when the ship starts sailing. And I'd like to welcome back to the show our co-host all the way down in California. How you doing today, Chris?
Doing pretty good. It is sweater weather here. Californians don't handle cold well, though, so it's literally like in the 60s. It's not that cold, but we are all bundled up and ready for the long, hard, cold winter.
The holiday. You know, it always cracks me up when I get out of either LA, San Diego, over to Hawaii, and it gets down to 60 and people break out their North Face jackets. They get their puffy jackets out there and just, living their best life.
Oh, yeah. I cracked into my Alaska cruise outfits this week so that I could rock the Patagonia and stay warm.
We got a couple special guests on the podcast today. We did a show over on the DCL Dudes show with Wes and Chris and had such a good time doing it that we thought we'd try and recreate the magic and see if we could do it again. So I'd like to welcome to the show today, all the way from the East Coast up there in the Northeast reaches. He's laughing at us back here with our cold weather. How you doing tonight, Wes?
I'm doing well, Steve. Thanks for having me on. This is fun. Yeah, I was just looking at the weather. It's gonna be 43 and raining tomorrow, and so we are just getting started out here in the Northeast. So the worst is yet to come for sure.
And joining Wes too, we always enjoy having it back on the show. Chris from Northern California, Chris Braga. How you doing tonight, Chris?
I am good. Here in California, we're supposed to be 64 tomorrow, and I'm going to be freezing.
Well, it's kind of deserty out where you are, sort of, isn't it? In the summer, it gets pretty hot out there.
We have our summer days running 85 to 90 is normal, but we going into August and September, we had 105, 106. And 2 weeks ago, we had 95, and now it's freezing here.
Oh, man. Well, hopefully we all survive the holidays and the winter and everything else. But actually, I don't know about you guys, but I'm looking forward to the holidays. But before we talk about our topic tonight, which we're going to talk about port adventures, and we've come up with 3 favorite port adventures. We'll see where we go with those. We got some news today with the Disney company had their fourth quarter earnings. And Wes, you were kind of following along with that. Could you talk a little bit about what happened today? Or what they announced?
Yeah. So, I mean, the big thing that came out of it was, one, Bob Chapek came on and kind of gave a high-level overview of the state of the cruise industry right now. And he sort of mentioned the strict CDC guidelines, didn't go into any details about, any return to cruising or anything like that, which I wouldn't really expect him to, because it was just during the Q&A session of the conference call, but did mention, once again, reaffirmed the Wish arrival in the summer of 2022, which is cool. I always like to hear Disney acknowledge the new project, but they also mentioned that they are pushing the arrival of the 2 new ships after that out to 2024 and 2025. So I think originally they were scheduled for, was it 2022 and 2023? So the schedule has definitely been pushed back a lot, but he did acknowledge that, both of all 3 ships are still part of the plan. So, I mean, I thought that was some pretty good news.
Well, that is good news, because that gives Chris Bright and I time to catch up and become platinum with the rest of you guys, or whatever the new one is. So we may not be able to get on the Wish, but maybe we'll get on one of the other 2.
We may see another Castaway Club level by the time the Wish is introduced. Who knows?
One of the things that I kind of follow on Facebook is there's like a Meyer Werft group. They put an article up, and I find this kind of interesting. Obviously, Disney doesn't need the 2 new ships right now. They're going to be, they've got their hands full just getting the other 4 going, right, with what's going on and everything else. But I found it kind of interesting that, so Meyer Werft, just kind of like the airline industry, is kind of they're trying to renegotiate with their workers what salaries and wages they're going to make over the next couple of years to, reduce their costs. And one of the things that their management said is that they look at ship prices for delivery from 2023 and beyond to drop dramatically. So it doesn't surprise me that maybe Disney pushes their 2 ships off a little bit further. I would be curious to see what kind of possible price cuts they get off of the shipyard. But then again, that just might be a ploy to get the workers to take a little cheaper wage.
Right. So, that's interesting. I wonder what what they're changing that would cause the price to go down, at least, in a material way.
I think it's more just the overall what they can sell them for, right? Just the demand as far as those dropping.
Gotcha.
So
I guess that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. But the other kind of thing that's been cool, have you been following along the piece of the ship where the engine's going to attach to? They floated it out. They built it.
Yeah, I love watching those videos. Yeah.
So I'm not quite sure on this or not, but the Odyssey of the Seas is going to be pulled out in the next couple of days or in the next week or so. That's in Hull 6, and I'm not sure if that's where the Wish is going to be built or not, if it's the next one in, but it'll be interesting to follow along with it. Well, anything else, guys, before we kind of jump into our little topic du jour tonight? All right. Well, we get a lot of questions about port adventures. Obviously, all of us have sailed on all 4 of the different ships. And, well, actually, now I take that back. Chris, you haven't been on the Wonder yet, have you?
No, my Grand Slam was scheduled for October of the year 2020. So as you might have guessed, we were going to sail our first ever back-to-back, too. We were going to do dumb 2-night Wonder sailings and then do a back-to-back with a 5-night. So it'd be like a 1-week sailing. And it didn't happen.
So I thought the way this would work, and I wasn't making fun of you, Chris. I apologize. I kind of popped in my mind as I said that. But this doesn't necessarily have to be port adventures that we did on a Disney cruise, if you've been on other cruises besides Disney. And so I thought we did with 3, and then we give a shout out at the end there, kind of an honorable mention to something that you enjoy doing on Castaway Cay. So I guess, who should we start with? I guess I'm the old man of the group, so I can't say it that way. Let's start it with the millennial. Chris, why don't you start? You don't have to give your best or your least. Let's just start with one of them.
You love to start with me. Okay. I will start with Alaska. So Disney sometimes goes to this place called Icy Strait Point, but it's this small town called Hoonah that is, they have taken a cannery and built a cruise port terminal situation. And in that particular port, the tribe, the Native American tribe that operates it, also operates every single port adventure. You cannot book a port adventure in this particular port without booking through your cruise line. And so if Disney stops there, one of the cruise options will be, or one of the port options will be this zip liner, which is the tallest and longest zip line in North America. And basically you go to the top of a mountain and they put you into like a zip line that's more like a seat than it is like holding on above your head. And then you get up to like 70 miles per hour and you just fly down this mountain. And you get to go with up to 6 people, so you can race your friends. The person who weighs the most will win. So lucky me, I won. But basically, it's one of the coolest things I've ever done. It was like so expensive, like very expensive for a zip line. But it's not like a zip line in the Caribbean where you may be going like, 300-400 yards tops. It's like you're literally going over a mile on this thing. It's easily one of the coolest port adventures I've ever done. I will say it sells out any ship that goes there because they have a limited number. They can only do 6 at a time and it takes them a while to reset it. So if you know it's something you want to do, book it early, and you have to book it through the cruise line. So make sure that you go onto their website and book it. We did not book it early, which meant that we had to combine it with another thing that we didn't care about, which was like a 4-wheeler through the forest. And that was like kind of fun, but really we were there for the zip line. So that'll be my number 1 port adventure. One of the best things we did in Alaska. It's amazing.
Have you heard people call Icy Strait Point the Castaway Cay of Alaska? Have you heard that before?
I have. It does
it stand up to the name? Does it live up to the name?
I mean, it is not Castaway Cay, but the town attached to it is so small. And it's about a 20-minute walk to even get in there. So unless you do port adventures, you're basically just walking around a cannery, or you walk like a half mile to get into the town. We did walk the half mile to get into the town. We had really good halibut cheeks. Highly recommend. And there was some good food there, and it's an amazing town with amazing history. Almost everyone who lives in that town is Native American. You can see lots of totem poles and all that stuff. But I will say the port adventures there are very curated by the tribe. And so this particular port adventure when we realized we were going to get to do it, it was on the top of our list for the whole week, and we were looking forward to it the whole time.
I don't know if you guys have seen it. There's a webcam for Icy Strait Point that literally looks right down the zip line. And the ship is docked right there at the bottom of it. So it's a really cool webcam view to take a look at when you know the Wonder is going to be in port there. And you can also kind of watch it come in because there's different views of the webcam. So, you know, if the Wonder, I think it's going back there this summer, but it's a pretty cool thing to check out when the Wonder's docked in port there.
I've seen like a race like that in Vegas. They have the 6 lines or 4 or 5 lines down this alleyway in Vegas that you can race. Well, let's go to Chris Braga. How about you next? What's your first port adventure?
So I'm going to go all the way over to the Med, and it'd be on Disney has a Pompeii, Sorrento, and Capri port adventure. We did that last summer, and we had a great time. Pompeii is just, the history there, to see everything there was really just incredible. And then we spent the afternoon in Sorrento. We had lunch there, walked around the shopping area, and we actually didn't do the Capri part of it that day. We chose not to, but we just had a blast doing that. And Sorrento is one of the coolest European towns we visited on the multiple towns we went to last year.
The food's amazing over there, isn't it? They talk about like the Italian food, but until you get over to the Mediterranean, I mean, I've just never had anything like it.
So that was mine.
Awesome. Well, let's keep it going. And how about you, Wes?
I was going to do a Castaway Cay one, but we'll save that one for the end. So one of my favorites was actually, I think, the first port adventure that I ever did. Just my wife and I, we were in St. Thomas, and we had done a lot of research beforehand, and all signs seemed to indicate that we should, make our way over to St. John for the day. So we found this port adventure that is called the St. John Champagne Catamaran Sail and Snorkel. They still offer it. It's still one that you can do. You take a catamaran from St. Thomas over to St. John, and the catamaran ride over is one of the highlights of the whole trip because they sort of take their time going over. The water is just, I mean, it's this amazing blue color. The sun was shining. It was just a perfect day to be out on the water. So that was really fun. It was probably about an hour to get over there. And then when we got over to St. John, we went to a beach called Honeymoon Beach. It was really private. When we got there, we were the only ones there. So we got to kind of enjoy the bay and the beach there for a little bit just by ourselves. Really good snorkeling. There were sea turtles there that we got to snorkel with. There was another excursion that came a little bit later, I think from a different cruise line, but not very many people. So it was relatively private, and it was just a really great experience. And then I think we got to spend about an hour at the beach and snorkeling, and then got back on and got to do like the champagne part heading back to St. Thomas. So the ride back was a little bit quicker. They went quite a bit faster, but it was a lot of fun. I would, if you're visiting St. Thomas, that's definitely one that I would recommend for sure.
Yeah, nothing like getting off a boat, getting on another boat, right?
Exactly.
You can't be on the water enough.
Yeah, can't get enough of it.
So I'm going to stay in the Caribbean too, because in kind of like yours, Wes, we did one on the Magic when we went to Grand Cayman, and they've got 2 different places called Stingray City there, and I should have looked it up, the difference between the two. Maybe you guys know. I've only been there once. Have you been there, Wes?
I haven't been on a Western.
Okay, we did a catamaran tour with the kids. It was all families out there, and it was super cool because the catamaran had like in between the 2 pontoons, and I should know my ships better, but in between the 2 pontoons, they kind of had like an area where the kids could just hang out. And so all the kids just kind of bonded quickly on it, and we're just having a blast as we boated out to the Stingray City. And there's 2 different ones. One, you just wade out and hang out with the stingrays, but this one you actually get to snorkel. So you jump in the water. You got a whole hour with them, and the crew were really good about bringing the stingrays up so everybody could touch them for those that didn't want to go down there. But I think what really makes it the most memorable to me was after we got done with that, and then they bring out the rum punch or whatever you guys want to have on the way back. But the captain let all the kids have a chance to sail the boat as we went back.
Oh, that's cool.
Just remember watching my oldest sail in the ship. And then back in the back half of the pontoons were kind of like these little stairs that went down to the water. And my youngest was back there with his feet in the water, just kicking. And I mean, it was just like one of those things that there's probably better excursions to go on potentially, but it was just a magical one for our family. We just had a blast.
Have you ever done the one at Castaway Cay, Steve? Or has anybody? I've heard really good things about it, but haven't done it ourselves.
No, we've done we got lucky enough to do the parasailing, so that's the only thing we've done. All right, Chris, kicking it back to you.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I would say leaving Alaska, going to a warmer climate. We did. Okay, this is going to be nerdy, and probably many viewers will not care, or listeners will not care about this particular topic, but I can be a bit of a science nerd. And so in Grand Cayman, we did a tour of the mangrove forest and learned how mangroves work. Because for those of you who don't know, mangroves are a type of tree that live in salt water, which is very difficult for plants to do. They literally suck the salt up through their root system and then crystallize it on their leaves and plop it back into the water, which is also an amazing thing. But mangroves are literally the number one protection that an island has from hurricanes. And so they're really important. Also, baby fish, they use the roots of mangroves as an estuary to make sure that it's safe to grow up without predators in the open sea. And so they're really important to ecosystems. So we did that, and we got to touch jellyfish, tour the mangrove forest, and this was on Grand Cayman, which is, a Western Caribbean island. Stingray City is another option that you could do on a Grand Cayman tour, but we went a very nerdy scientific. I will also point out that if you have mobility issues, this is the one for you. There was zero walking involved in this tour at all.
So did you get on a boat then and go through the mangroves?
Yeah, you get on a little tiny boat, and they just go as far into the mangroves as they can, and they show you how they work, and they do a bunch of really interesting, science talk. And the person who did our tour, at least, was a person who had lived in Grand Cayman for 50 years or something. So knew very intimately the island. Also could talk about how the island recovered from hurricanes and storms and what the mangroves meant to their... A lot of times people with expensive yachts in the Grand Caymans will drive their yachts into mangroves before a hurricane because they know that they'll be safe afterwards. Also, Grand Cayman's covered with chickens. And the reason why it's covered with chickens is because a hurricane destroyed a chicken farm and they just couldn't round up all the chickens. So now there's just these feral chickens all over Grand Cayman, everywhere, because they just didn't round them back up.
That is so funny because it's the same thing in Kauai. There's chickens all over Kauai, and it's because of Hurricane Iniki that went through back in the 90s. And,
no way.
Yeah, it wiped it because people actually they didn't have chicken farms necessarily, but people kept chickens in their back, and the chickens just went everywhere. Now there's just chickens everywhere you go. So I don't know. The things you learn.
That's hilarious.
The things you learn on the Disney Cruise Line podcast. Huh? So, Chris, you work with plants in your job. Does that interest you at all? Thinking about mangroves, Chris Braga?
Yeah, actually, I like all kind of agriculture. So it's I was actually reading about mangroves today somewhere. I was reading some article about it actually. About the Florida Keys. It was about because the ships aren't going back there next year, and then they're talking about some mangroves. It was your show you were talking about it, weren't I? Listened to your podcast, Steve.
Yeah.
I think the person was talking about mangroves on your podcast.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, let's toss it over to you, Chris. What do you got for number 2?
So I'm going to go from the beautiful, warm Mediterranean to freezing Alaska. And in Ketchikan, you can do the Alaska Hummer Adventure. And so we did that last year, and it's a 4 or 5 hour excursion. And I want to say it was around $500. So it's not really expensive. It's not cheap, but for a family, it wasn't horrible. And that enabled us to see everything there is to see in Ketchikan, because there's not a very big place to drive around. And we had a good time. And we got there, and our driver said, "What do you guys want to see?" And I said, "We have no idea. Just show us what's here, basically." So we went out to a lake and a dam and got to see, it was a 65-degree day. And here's these kids swimming in this lake. The water had to be 50 degrees, but it's normal for them. And there's logs in there, and they're trying to walk on the logs. And I'm just thinking, these kids are going to fall and crack their head open. But God, it's a lot of fun. Something you see out of a movie. They're trying to balance on the logs. And then she took us out. We went to a waterfall. And then we were able to ask her, okay, where's the best place to eat lunch? Not close to the ship. So we had a really good lunch that day. And overall, it was just a great excursion. Got to see everything kind of at our pace and had a good time.
I like the ability that you could kind of, come up with what you wanted to do that day based on what they were recommending you to, right? It sounded like, Chris?
Yeah, she said, what do you guys want to do? And I'm like, we've never been here before. So we started off the day, I think we went and saw some eagles. We're looking for some bears. We saw some salmon, jumping upstream, just driving around and going a lot of back roads. And we're going by a school. And I'm like, we're driving by and I go, how come that baseball field has no turf? And she goes, we have tough kids here in Alaska that can't have lawn because it rains so much. So it's just dirt for a high school baseball field. So we got to see kind of neat stuff like that. And we got to take pictures under a couple eagles. I mean, they're like 20 feet above us, just in a tree. And we were just taking all the pictures we want to take. And I was just on someone's property. It's like, yeah, we had permission to go out here. So we're just going to park here and walk out by this person's house here. There's some eagles here usually. So it's really kind of a neat way to see Ketchikan.
That's awesome. Hey, Wes, have you been up to Alaska yet?
Yeah. I my number one port adventure is gonna come from Alaska. So
I didn't mean to throw that.
It's all good. No, it's fine. Yeah, no, but Ketchikan is. I loved Ketchikan. We didn't get to do as much in Ketchikan as I probably would have wanted to. When we went to Alaska, we really planned for Skagway and for Juneau, and kind of were like, we'll just figure out what we want to do in Ketchikan. But I ended up. Ketchikan was actually the port that I ended up liking the most, just the town. The town is such a cool town. I wished we had, planned a little bit better for Ketchikan. So when we go back to Alaska, that's definitely a town that we want to really focus in on and find something fun to do there.
You have a port where you can get off the ship and walk around the town and easily spend 2 to 4 hours looking at different stores and get something to eat. It's kind of
such a cool town
right next to the port.
Right.
Well, I'm gonna take us back to Europe there, Chris. And wait a minute, we gotta get Wes back in there. I'm sorry.
Me.
I did. You were talking and then I totally lost.
Yeah, that's all right.
It's a senior moment. All right.
Yeah. So my number two actually back in the Caribbean at a place that Disney Cruise Line hasn't sailed to for a while and isn't on the schedule. It's in Grenada, which, by the way, I loved the island of Grenada. It was really cool. Place I would definitely go back to, and I wish Disney Cruise Line would go back to, but so far no luck. But anyway, so we signed up for this port adventure. It was it went to this fort that overlooked the ocean and got a really great view of the wonder from up there. I think it was called Fort George. And then we went to a beach. I don't even remember the name. Magazine Beach, I think it was called. The Disney Port Adventure was not the highlight of this trip because it was the Port Adventure was actually terrible. I wouldn't recommend it. But before we had gone on the trip, I had seen a picture of a cast member at this waterfall. For the longest time, like one of my bucket list items was to go to this tropical place and, with trees all around you and jump into this pool beneath a waterfall. And I'm like, that's where I want to go. And so I did a bunch of research. I just, looked up waterfalls in Grenada, and I was comparing the Google pictures to the picture that I saw on Instagram. And I finally found it. It was called this waterfall called Annandale Falls. And there weren't any port adventures that went there. So I was kind of trying to figure out how I was going to get there. I ultimately didn't find any private excursions that would take me there. So when we got there, I had pretty much just come to the terms that we weren't going to visit. But on the port adventure that we did, I asked our driver who had driven, the group to the port adventure, had you ever heard of this waterfall? He's like, oh yeah, I know where that is. I'll take you there. I'm like, yeah, and so, we went on with our port adventure. And then when we got back, he's like, hey, do you want me to take you to that waterfall? And by this time it was like 1:00 in the afternoon. I think all aboard was at like 4:30. And I'm like, can you get me there and back before the ship leaves? And he's like, yeah, of course, no problem. So we did it. We trusted this guy. It's probably, not one of my top wisest moves that I ever made, but we got in this van with him and he drove us into like the interior of Grenada through these like winding roads into the jungle area and brought us right to this waterfall. And the tourists had left for the day, so it was completely empty. We were the only ones there. The guy waited for us at the entrance, and we got to go in and just jump into the waterfall and got to swim around in the pool, go underneath the water. It was just a really amazing experience, and and one that I definitely will never forget. And I hope we can go back there sometime because it was really amazing. And
So
we
you
made
saw
it
the
back.
backside of
We made
water.
it back for all aboard. And we saw the backside of water. Yes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to step
No,
on
no,
you.
it's all good.
No, that sounds amazing. Where is Grenada? Is that
Yeah, it was a Southern
Is that
Caribbean
where-
cruise. Yep, exactly. And
Okay.
they stopped sailing there even on the Southerns, unfortunately.
That's too bad. Well, hopefully, like you said, they'll. It'd be amazing. It'd be nice to see them mix up the ports a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree.
It seems like they're I mean, you've been around it probably longer. You and Chris have been around it longer than Chris Bright and I have. But it seems like they're mixing it up a little bit more the last couple of years, trying to find some different things.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's one of the. Anytime a new schedule release comes out, it's always like, where are we going to that's new? That's what I always look out for. Not we. I mean, I shouldn't say we. I mean, like, where's Disney Cruise Line going that's new? I always like to see new places that they're going. So,
Well, I'm going to go back to someplace cold too. It was the second cruise we did with Disney, and we ended up going to Norway because my mom's from Norway, so that was kind of the impetus for that cruise. But we ended up going to, you get some amazing scenery in Alaska. And I will honestly say, I think that overall the scenery in Alaska, you're around the scenery longer there than if you do a Norwegian cruise. But the scenery when you do see it in Norway is just spectacular. And the highlight of it was the port of Geiranger. You go, it's a World Heritage Site, and unfortunately, I think Wes, you and I were talking about it last time. That they're limiting the cruise ships from going up there now. But it was just an amazing. They kind of did the same thing like when the Wonder goes up to the glacier, where it was about a 2-hour drive through the fjord to get to the head of it. And they had some narration and everything else as you went along, and you saw just some amazing waterfalls. And then the port adventure we picked was kind of cool because we went to a farm, and for what my wife and I did, it wasn't all that exciting. We found out that he can't make as much money farming like he used to, so now he makes his own beer, and he makes most of his money by making beer. So we kind of went in and had meats and cheeses and drank some beers. But what the kids got to do was, it was like one of the port adventures where Disney kind of promotes it with like a kids activity, but they got to meet with his wife, and she collected these like old stamps, like these old kind of iron stamps that you would put into ink and then you put it on a cloth. All the kids got to make one of those, and it came out in just like a square the size of a pillow. And we brought it back, and my mom turned them into pillows for the kids. And just seeing the scenery of Geiranger, seeing
really
the
cool
waterfalls, it was just spectacular. And then just the kind of a cool keepsake that the kids have now that's on their beds that kind of reminds us every time of that cruise and that day. So that was
really
our
cool.
second one.
Steve, do you ever like eat the local food? How's the food in Norway? I've always wondered that.
A lot of fish. So if you,
yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, you got to kind of like fish. It was kind of interesting because they had a market we went to in Oslo. They had kind of an open farmers market, and they had whale. They had all that you could try, and all different kinds of things like that, salted whale. So it's definitely exotic, I guess, compared to what we have over here for the most part. But yeah, it was good.
Cool.
Chris, why don't we jump back with you with your third one?
Is this my last one?
Well, we'll do an honorable mention when I Castaway Cay, or it doesn't have to be Castaway Cay. It could be something else.
Okay, well then I will say the most like grandiose excursion that we have done was we basically, okay, first of all, for those of you who listen to all of our episodes, I have a thing for Tortola. I think it's amazing. It's beautiful. It's the unsung hero of the Caribbean. And we did a tour of Tortola with jeeps, where you drive your own jeep, and you can literally drive the entire island in the course of a day. But we stopped at a beach and we swam, and we went to the tallest point on the island, and we learned a ton of stuff. And also, even though we were driving our own Jeep, we were in a caravan of other Jeeps. And so the front Jeep was able to radio in and describe things to us as we went along. So we were still getting an educational vibe, but with an off-road, driving your own Jeep in another country vibe as well. So highly recommend. It's a little pricey, but not as pricey as the tours where you rent your own car and just go off and do your own thing. Those ones are really pricey. This one was like, you get the experience of driving your own car, but still the structure of a tour guide. So I'd say it's like best of both worlds. And yeah, it was amazing. One of the best.
Do they drive on the same side of the road as we do?
Oh, wow. Yeah. And my husband and my mother-in-law were like, you're going to be doing this driving because it's a little scary. It's a little scary. I wouldn't say if you are not a comfortable driver, maybe don't pick an excursion where you drive yourself. But I'm a confident driver. I grew up in California. We have intense road rage situations on a daily basis. So I felt like I could handle it. We were successful. When we went into the water there, it was like literally just past waist deep water and you're fully surrounded by tropical fish and like it's gorgeous. So I would say, and they take you to like a super secluded beach. And I also made best friends with like a stray dog. I don't know who owned this dog, but it's definitely an island dog. But this dog like came and just followed me around for the entire like hour and a half that we were on the beach. It's pretty magical.
So did you turn the windshield wipers on every time you went to turn your blinker? Did you notice that?
Well, so the thing is,
because they're on the opposite sides.
On the right side of the car. But
okay.
On the wrong side of the road. So
gotcha.
It was real confusing.
Oh yeah.
Really a little bit stressful.
Oh, that is weird.
Yeah, it was a lot. But it's because Tortola is part of the British Virgin Isles. So they follow the British standard for driving.
Well, Chris Braga, what about you?
So I'm going to go from the cold of Alaska to the cold of New York on a New York sailing where you have a port adventure of Disney World. And I got to say it was one of our funnest times on a ship. There's something about being in Port Canaveral, getting off the ship at 7 a.m. like you normally would, but thinking, I'm coming back here tonight. I'm not going home today. And so they'd have buses load you, take you to the parks. They loaded your Magic Band with, I think, 3 fast passes. There was a glitch, and your fast passes, you get 3 to every park you went. So it was kind of, we went to multiple parks. We went to actually all 4 parks, ate a late dinner in Disney Springs. Some people stayed and watched the fireworks. And all aboard was midnight, and we got back about 11:40, and we're probably one of the last guests getting back on the ship. There's a lot of crew getting back on. They'd gone to the store and stuff. But it was just a really fun day that, getting off the ship in Port Canaveral and then coming back that night and getting back on the ship in Port Canaveral and continuing your cruise for another 3 days.
I'm glad you brought that one up, Chris, because I actually didn't even think of that when I was thinking about the show. Because that is, they're not doing it right now. They're not doing those sailings from New York to, with a stop at Port Canaveral. I think all the upcoming ones are all to Bermuda. But, if that's ever an option, Steve and Chris, that's a really fun cruise to do. And that, Chris is right, that port adventure to Disney World is just a really unique experience. And on top of it, it was a very maritime cruise. So when you come back on the ship, it's like 11 o'clock at night. So it's really quiet, and they have like Christmas carolers in the lobby. And so it's all quiet except for these Christmas carolers. So it was a really cool experience. Yeah, I agree. That's a good one.
Was it Christmas for you too, Chris, when you guys did it?
Yes, it was. I was actually on the sailing the week after Wes in 2018. So I was kind of following him along on Twitter, seeing stuff was going on, and we got on the ship the week after.
Yeah.
Chris Bright, you might have to change up your Panama Canal trip for this one. This sounds like it's right up your alley.
It's a good one. It's a really fun one.
I think it's a really good cruise for people who live in the East that don't generally go to Disney World, maybe, but they get on the ship. It's opening up a new world to them. Get on this ship, go on a cruise, go to Disney World for the day, and kind of experience things that they're not Disney people per se.
Well, since I've given pretty much all your port adventures away today, Wes, with Castaway Cay in Alaska, we'll toss it over to you.
Yeah, so my number one is in Alaska. It's in Juneau. We were very fortunate to go dog sledding on a glacier. We got in a helicopter and got to, fly up to a glacier and go dog sledding. It was the year after we got married, so it was just my wife and I, and I'm glad we did it when we did, because I think when we did it, it was around like $450 a person. And I looked recently, and it was $755 a person. So it's, almost doubled since we did it. So I'm really glad we got to have the experience. But it was, not only a not top port adventure, but it was a top, experience of our lives, because it was just amazing. You get in the helicopter, and first of all, you take off, and you get to, you fly right over the top of the ship. So you get a really cool view of the Wonder docked there in Juneau, get a good look at downtown Juneau. And then the helicopter sort of winds you through these mountain passes. There's snow everywhere. And then, you come around, it's almost like you come around this bend around the back of a mountain, and it's just white as far as you can see, because you've gotten on the glacier. And then off in the distance is these little specks on the ground, and it's a dog camp. And we found out they actually spend their summer times there. They're actually training for actual dog sled races. They're, the dogs live on the glacier, and they train all summer. But, we landed there, the helicopter flew away. So there's literally, no transportation out of there. You just look around, and there's just, snow covered mountains all around you. You're in this like valley on the glacier. You have and then they introduce you to your sled team. They hook you up to the sled, and then there's like this 2-mile loop that the dogs just take you out on, and you're not with a guide or anything. It was just my wife and I on a sled with these 8 dogs or whatever, and they sort of give you a tutorial on how to make them go, how to make them stop, and you just ride around on this big loop. And it was, just an incredible experience. It was just amazing. And then the helicopter comes back, picks you up, and you get to enjoy the ride back to Juneau. So really, really amazing experience.
I guess I'm surprised that you get to do that yourself. I figured you sat there and somebody else kind of steered along.
So was I. I was shocked when they told us that we were going to get to go by ourselves. I thought we'd have to have a musher or whatever, but nope. They sort of teach you just the basics and send you off on your way.
So you're qualified for the Iditarod next year.
Exactly. Oh yeah, just send me out there. I'm ready to go. I'm from the Northeast, but I'm kind of a wimp when it comes to cold weather. So I wouldn't last very long on the Iditarod.
How often do the dogs take someone out there and then want to take them back?
That's a good question. I don't know, but
growing up around horses. Horses sense when someone doesn't know what they're doing and will not cooperate. I've seen it many times when I was younger. My mom had horses. Horses either take off with someone or not move. I see the dog getting out there and going, "Okay, you guys can walk back now."
That'd be funny. Fortunately, you can see just, miles. So it's not like they could just leave you out there and then no one would ever know. You could see the sled teams that are out there. So I guess it's possible they could leave you out there. Who knows? Fortunately, it didn't happen to us. I guess we got lucky in that respect.
That's pretty amazing. I can't remember, Chris, did you went up on a glacier too, didn't you? Or am I out to lunch on that? When you guys went to Alaska?
No, we had one person whose lifelong dream was to do that, but all of us were like, we don't have $800 to spend on just one port adventure per person. But I will say that our friend who did do that brought back some water from the glacier, and we drank that.
That's cool.
So I feel like I've had part of the experience. Also, our entire crew in Alaska was obsessed with glaciers. We just spent the whole time talking about them. So I feel like it is a natural progression for me one day to walk on a real glacier.
I love the blue color too when you get up on the glaciers too. It's amazing. Chris, have you been up on a glacier?
No, we were on our cruise. There wasn't an option because it was only a 5 night. So we cruised up to the glacier, got about a mile away from it. We didn't have the opportunity though. We actually had a cruise booked this last summer. We were going to do the helicopter thing. Obviously it got canceled.
Well, hopefully next summer, right?
Yeah, we have it booked for next summer, so we'll see what happens.
So mine's a little bit different too, like Chris with his love of science. I actually love history. My top one, I guess, that we did, I'm not going to say it's the top one, but one of my favorite ones that we did was when we were on Norwegian. But Disney goes there also, and that was in the town of St. Petersburg, Russia. And Disney has 2 different options. They have time when you can spend 1 day there. We spent 2, and Disney also has the option to spend 2 days there on a little bit longer cruise. And if you ever get the chance to go there, and if you're going to spend the money to go up there and can do it, I highly recommend doing 2 days in St. Petersburg because it's just an amazing city. The one thing that's kind of interesting is kind of similar to Ketchikan, where I think Ketchikan has 65 or something like that days where it does not rain there. And St. Petersburg is the same way. It's kind of Yeah. Was it rainy there when you were in Ketchikan, Wes? Yeah.
I think it's like the rainiest city in the world, I think, is what they told us when we were there.
It's definitely right up there with one.
Or right up there. Yep.
Yeah, and St. Petersburg's the same way, which I thought was kind of odd because it's like way north. Yeah, it's way north in Russia and everything else. But just an amazing city, so much history. My wife's really big into the whole, totally drawing a blank with her name. The one, the Tsarist daughter who supposedly may not have died. Do you guys remember who that is by any chance?
Rasputin, Anastasia?
No, Anastasia.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's like this all controversy that Anastasia, there's actually a musical, Chris, on Broadway for that, about Anastasia.
Thank you. I'm the one who would be telling you that there's a musical.
I know. Why I know that, I don't know, but I guess I walked by to New York or something like that. But the castles like you've never seen before. If you've ever had a chance to go to Versailles in France, I mean, these castles are even bigger than Versailles. The Peterhof Castle, we got to see the Amber Room, if you've ever heard of that.
Oh, yeah.
And then one of my favorite characters from history is Rasputin, because the guy just wouldn't die. Like they like tried to kill him so many different ways, and he kept on going. But you got to go to where he was actually poisoned before he made it out of there, and he eventually dies, I think, on a bridge or something like that. But just an amazing city. The food was incredible. You got to do shots of vodka at lunch with everybody on the tour, and I can't highly recommend it enough. If you're into history, if you're into that type of Russian history, or just Northern European, I can't highly recommend enough going to St. Petersburg.
That's cool. That's definitely a city that I see it on the itineraries, and I'm like, that would be really cool to visit.
Yeah, and I was more excited. I was most excited about Stockholm for some reason, and St. Petersburg. Just like I would go back there in an instant, any day. Before we wrap it up, I guess I've got a couple questions for you guys. Oh, we have to do the honorable mention, I guess, don't we?
We do like a lightning round.
Quick
one.
Yeah. Well, before we do that, I've got a question for you, Wes. I know you're a travel agent. When you're working with customers or with your clients and stuff like that, where they're going on their first cruise, what kind of recommendations do you give people, when they're cruising that first time, as far as like how to determine what type of port adventures they want to do? Like, where do you point them towards?
That's a good question. I think it's really a lot about personal preference, because, I typically recommend spending a lot of time just thinking about what you want to do when you get to these ports of call. And I'll usually point them to like the Disney Cruise website that shows you all the different port adventures, because they do allow you to break it down right in the website. You can go into their port adventures, and then you can go by port of call and see what they have to offer. So I'll sort of try to lead them, like, do you want adventurous, or do you want, something relaxing? Do you want something that is, like a tour? Are you trying to eat or drink, do local stuff? So it's hard to point someone in the right direction until you really kind of get a feel for what they want to do. Because a lot of times they'll say, I don't know what I want to do because I don't know what there is. And then so you just kind of ask those questions. Well, what do you like to do? What do you picture yourself doing in a port like this? So it's kind of how I approach it.
Gotcha. I didn't mean to put you on the spot there.
Oh, no, that's fine. No, that's good.
Chris Braga, how about you when you and your family, thinking about the different ports you go to? What are some of the things you look at when you decide what you want to do?
Well, we usually, I have a daughter who's 18 and a son that's 15. So, it's, they want to do complete opposite things. So like when we went to the Mediterranean last year, I printed about, for every port, 3 or 4 options for us. And then as a family, we said, okay, look, we can do this or we can do this, and kind of agree on. And one day we did something my son liked better. Like he liked Pompeii a lot, and my daughter wanted to do something else. We I print out 3 or 4 options and kind of give them choices from there. I look at it first. I figure I'm not doing this, so I didn't give them that option. And this, I try to give them 3 or 4 options, and we just discuss it as a family, and everyone kind of puts their input. And we try to do one day for everyone, kind of their favorite thing.
That's awesome. And how about you, Chris Bright?
We always set down a couple days before our pay in full and look through the website, see what interests people, maybe make a top 3 for each port. We usually will also pick a port where we don't do anything as a vibe, just to sort of do what we want to do. In Alaska, that port was Juneau, because we felt like it would have more resources than other ports, so we would be able to find more stuff to do. And that ended up being one of the best days of the whole cruise, because we hiked, I think, 1,800 feet up a mountain. And then we took the Mount Roberts tramway back down. which we would not have known that was even an option had we not gone on that hike. So, yeah, I feel like there are benefits to having a day where you don't do a port adventure, and then there are benefits to planning it out ahead of time and trying to make sure everyone's pleased with at least one of the days, or really looking forward to at least one of the days.
And Steve, if you don't mind circling back to me, one of the things that my family really likes to do when figuring out port adventures is we like to have authentic experiences. Like, we really look for those authentic experiences in those ports of call. Like in Alaska, we've thought, it doesn't get much more authentic than dog sledding, so that was something we really wanted to do. In Skagway, we took a train through the mountains, into the Klondike, which we thought was one of those types of experiences. When we went to Key West, we wanted to get some key lime pie. Felt like that was something that we had to do. So that's kind of the approach that we like to take. We look at the ports and we just say, what's a really, almost like a local experience to have. That's something that we like to do and something I try to recommend.
No, I like that. All good advice from you guys. I like the idea. I know when we went to the Med, we had so many port days that we took a day off there, and that was really nice to do. And it kind of frees up to just do what you want to do that day, kind of go by what you're feeling, which is kind of cool. And we try to, just like US, we try to find some things like that you can't do anyplace else. So all good advice from you guys. Well, thank you so much for coming on, you guys, and doing this. Before we get out of here, we'll just do a quick lightning round as far as an honorable mention. You can do it on Castaway Cay. You can do it anywhere you want. How about you, Wes? What's one other port adventure you've done that's just sticks in your mind and was a lot of fun?
Yeah, so this one is super basic. It's not, it's not anything like crazy. My family loves to rent bikes on Castaway Cay. It's one of our favorite port adventures. It's super inexpensive. It's a fun activity to kind of break up the day if you've been sitting on the beach a lot. And you get just a really cool view of the island by, taking the bike path and just taking the bikes around. So if you're visiting Castaway Cay, I always recommend to everybody who is visiting to rent the bikes and just, ride them around for an hour. It's really fun.
Awesome. How about you, Chris Braga?
So mine's going to be Castaway Cay too, and it's the jet ski adventure. And we booked it 5 times and actually done it 3 times because it's, the wind cancels a lot of excursions like the parasailing and all that stuff. So it's the way that Disney sells it sounds like a leisurely jet ski ride around the ocean, looking at different stuff. But it's run by, the locals from a tour company there, and they're all young kids. So as soon as you get out there, it's just full throttle.
They just turn you loose.
Basically, you follow everybody, and the leader is going as fast as he can go. And so if you can keep up with him, you're doing that. And it's just, it wears you out. I mean, I had a lot of experience jet skiing and stuff like that. And an hour of that, you're just tired, but it's a blast.
I love it. How about you, Chris Bright?
I'll say parasailing because we did it. We actually got to do it on our first try. So I know there are people who've tried 10 times and never done it. And some people will be like, make sure you do it first thing in the morning. But we were the literal last slot of the day and we did it. The one thing about being the last slot of the day is the people who run the parasailing live on an island in the Bahamas that's not Castaway. And you could tell that they were getting you up and bringing you down. So that vibe a little bit there, but we still had a blast. It was the best view I've ever had of Castaway, from 300 feet.
It's a really cool view, yeah.
And, it's a little emotional and maybe a little scary, all mixed in one. But once you're up there, it's not too scary. I feel like once you're up there, it's just tranquil. It's really quiet and beautiful. And you parasail right by the ship, so you can you're above the top decks of the ship looking down, which is cool.
Well, you took mine, so I guess I got to come up with something different. But I will say that with the parasailing too, don't do what I did, which I was all my photos were on my camera, on my phone, and I didn't bring one of those things you could hang around your neck or whatever that would keep it with the water. So I didn't get any pictures when we were up there in the air. Unfortunately, I got a lot from the boat. So if you're gonna go parasailing, maybe bring that with if you're bringing your phone, because I was too afraid to drop the thing in the water. I guess I'm gonna go with the Castaway Cay 5K. I don't know if that's really
That's
important.
a good one. That counts. Yeah.
But man, you get up going early. You get moving, get the blood flowing a little bit, and that frees up those extra cookies you can eat during lunch over at Cookies too. So the Castaway Cay 5K is always a fun thing to do as well. So, well, thanks you guys. I really appreciate you doing this. Wes, Chris, Braga, thanks you guys so much for coming on and having a little bit of fun with us tonight. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and I just want to wish you and your families the best as we move into the holidays here. Thanksgiving's coming up. You got anybody going anywhere, or everybody kind of sticking around?
Pretty local, yeah.
We're going to Arizona so we could actually eat in a restaurant, because in California, I'm not eating Thanksgiving in a tent. I need to go for work anyway, so I'm going to go a few days early, and the family's going to meet me down there, so this all worked out good. So spent a few days by the pool.
Well, you got your little island booked already?
Yes, I do.
Make sure you follow
Island.
Yeah, make sure you follow Chris and the Concierge on Twitter, because he puts out some cool pictures of some of the different places he travels, and one of them is his own little private island down there in Arizona.
There will be pictures.
Yeah. So, anyways, well, thanks again, guys. Happy holidays to you and your families, and hopefully we can do this again sometime soon in the future. It was a lot of fun.
Definitely looking forward to it. Take care, everyone.
Good night.
The DCL podcast is not affiliated with the Disney Cruise Line, Walt Disney Company, Adventures by Disney, or Run Disney. All of the opinions expressed on our shows are those of the hosts and the guests who appear on the show. If you have any questions about any of these products, please contact the Walt Disney Company.